some of the graphics that you see on your handouts won't be up here on the screen, but you do have them on your handouts. Okay, the two programs that we'd like to talk about very briefly this afternoon are the Community Options Program, which is part of the PASSAR Bureau, and Recovery Requires a Community. The Community Options Program started about a year ago, and its mission basically is, it's a part of the PASSAR department, and its mission basically is to provide leadership within the state, assistance to aid in the transition and diversion of individuals diagnosed with mental illness, to move them out of the nursing facilities into the most integrated setting that's appropriate for their needs. It is a PASSAR program. What's unique about it in PASSAR is that it's really an outreach program, and it's a proactive program to try to help people carry out, implement the spirit of PASSAR, to use the valuable information that we get through the PASSAR evaluation, and to translate that into meeting real needs for people out in the community. As a result, it focuses on individuals. It's not a large-scale program that does mass enrollments, and it focuses purely on individuals, the most difficult, most challenging cases. So as a result, earlier was mentioned that I've worked with 60 folks during the last year. That's a pretty high number considering the kind of work that has to go on a very individual basis. A very key element of it is that it builds alliances with state and community providers, especially with community providers. At its core, its values are that it is recovery, resiliency, and strengths-based. And I often hear from nursing facilities, she's not ready to go out yet because she still has this problem, all right, whatever it might be, incontinence or medication noncompliance or whatever. And you don't have to be cured. And that's a message that we get to people. We're very recovery focused, that you live with whatever disability you have, and we help provide the supports that make it possible for you to live successfully out in the community with that disability. It is person-centered, and again, the whole approach is individuals. It's individualized planning, and one thing that is a favorite of mine, a very important aspect, is that the resident, the individual themselves, has a strong voice. They need to participate, and it is their show. It is their party. Often their guardian will participate with them, but they are the key individual, and often that is overlooked. Somebody had said that we take sometimes nursing facilities, and in general we can take a very paternalistic approach to the people that we're attempting to help, and we know what's best for them. And the very first thing is that their voice needs to really dominate the discussion. The community options role in all of this is to lead through education, coaching, convening, bringing people together, empowering individuals. I always seek out what I'd call a transition champion among the group of stakeholders around any particular case. I'll always look out for one person. It's very often the money follows the person transition coordinator, because they're in the perfect position to be able to be that person. But not always. Sometimes it's the guardian working with others. And consulting when barriers come to transition. I'm trying to empower the stakeholders so that they're doing it themselves, not it's being done for them or to them. We're very data-driven. We're looking for continuous quality improvement, and for that I rely a lot on our IT organization, which is Ascend Management, as well as our own internal quality assurance specialists. And it also focuses on an integration of physical and behavioral health. The process flow is very simple, very quick. There's no wrong door entry to the community options, but most typically the referrals come through our own reviewers, our own appeals officer, sometimes the nursing facility itself that sees that it needs to comply with the PASSAR determination and hasn't got the first idea where to start. The individual and the guardian, I've gotten calls from individuals who have says, help me, get out of here. Nobody is listening to me. And so that's where we start. The State Disability Advocacy Group, when somebody calls them for that same reason, they will often turn to us, first of all, to find out what's the PASSAR status with this individual, and then let's go from there. So we will partner with them to assist in transitioning individuals that we work with them on. Constituency calls, which are occasionally a legislator will get a call from somebody in his constituency, and he's upset typically because the state is trying to drag their parent or their sibling out of a nursing home. So we will get involved at that point and explain what it is we're trying to do and try to engage them as really a partner in the process. And generally technical assistance calls that come from anywhere from the county mental health authorities, nursing facilities, wherever people who are having difficulty accessing resources. We do an internal conference consultation process so that we have a game plan and that the community options person can actually understand in more depth the case itself, the individual, what their needs are. And then I turn around and start making calls to stakeholders. This is the critical part, and convincing stakeholders, educating them onto what we're trying to achieve. And when you start approaching them with what it is you're trying to do, very often you'll hear them admit, yeah, I'd like her to have a more normal life. It would be nice if she was able to. What they think is that this person is going to be ripped from the nursing facility and put into the community without any supports at all. And that's really not the case at all. In fact, a lot of times community placement provides much more support than certainly the nursing facility can offer. I gather people's commitment to do a team meeting. Come together at a team meeting. In that team meeting, the resident is their show. Okay, they're guided by this point, there's been a champion, a transition champion that's been identified. That person is going to talk with the resident so that they understand that this is really for them, what it is that they want. It's amazing. Residents do understand this at all levels of functioning. They do understand that suddenly they have a voice as to what they want. And sometimes they need assistance from their guardian, but they get their message out. The team meeting agrees to start meeting on a regular basis. The needs are identified, people are given assignments, and people also settle on a date for when they'll meet again. And this team continues to operate until the individual is transitioned, and even beyond. And there's a certain point at which Adams program or other funding support programs, particularly, we call it Money Follows the Person program in Ohio, Home Choice. So the Home Choice program will actually take over and provides ongoing support in the community once the individual is transitioned. But that team still stays there in some form or other after the individual is discharged. Other aspects of the team process is that we track recidivism and placement stability at 30, 90, 180, and 360 days. I'd like to track a lot more, but I have to be honest, if we're lucky if we get to know that the individual is still out in the community, that doesn't pop up on our PASSAR, on our level 1 screen somewhere else, reapplying for the nursing facility. I'd like to be able to talk to that individual and get satisfaction surveys from them, but often we don't actually speak to the individual directly. We'll talk to a relative or somebody who knows them to find out how they're doing. We collaborate with state and county entities to try to develop, we're trying to develop models for practice and develop a pool of ideas. So, as I say, we strengthen the county's mental health toolkit. If there's a new type of programming that needs a new type of service or a nuance of an already existing service that's going to help meet this individual's needs, it becomes something that now the county has in their array of services. and we can use it in other counties as well. There's a lot of cross seeding that way. So it can serve as models for other counties. And we also are working to develop models for proactive, effective discharge planning. And a lot of the things that several of the slides that Pam had in her person-centered presentation, the kinds of questions, the kinds of things that you have to consider, very valuable in developing an overall plan. And it's amazing how primitive some of these plans are. There's a lot of room for growth in developing good, not only care planning, but discharge planning as well. And then we report back to state on trends that we're seeing, that might inform future care. Our target audience for this is folks who come to us through the various referral sources, folks that we get referred to us through Disability Rights Ohio, which is our state disability advocacy group, and any residents that come to our attention or are experiencing difficulty in their efforts to get out of the nursing facilities. We utilize resources in the state, fiscal, financial resources, community providers, and this is my segue into Adam. Adam operates the Recovery Requires a Community program, which is our newest funding resource, and it's a mental health resource. So at some point, as I'm winding down, we're getting the placement, the discharge is kind of on the books, it's being planned. This is the point at which Recovery Required community gets invited to the table so that they can bring their resources to bear on it. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam.
There is nothing like being the anchor leg to the anchor leg at the end of the day. So I'm deeply excited to be finishing up with you all today. You can see this blank slide. If you look at this wonderful little diagram, and if you stare at it long enough, it'll magically show up on that white screen. We thought we'd do a little, sort of visual surprise for all of you, kind of keep everybody engaged. So what is Recovery Requires a Community? Well, as George mentioned, it's a budget initiative that came out of our most recent Ohio budget with the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. At our core, we're a program that provides financial assistance to individuals with mental illness to help them transition and remain stable in the community after they have been in an institution. Now, that could mean immediately after they've been in an institution. It could be 6 months after they've been in an institution. It could be 18 months after they've been in an institution. But we're really there to help provide resources if there's a gap, and we're able to fill that. We work really closely with the Medicaid Home Choice Program, our flavor of MFP in Ohio. And at the end of the day, what we're really hoping to do, as many of you, I know at your heart, are here to do, is to help enforce the Olmstead decision. And then, one of the things that we continue to try to do is reduce the service delivery costs of the state and other systems, and increase those community linkages while reducing institutional placements. That's a lot of fancy jargon for just simply saying we're trying to do the best job in a stewardly way. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, and in order to help people stay in community when they want to. So where do we get folks? How does this all get started? We coordinate with a lot of different agencies. One of the things that makes me really excited is while I don't work directly for the PASSAR office, as weeks have gone by, we've continued to find really innovative and creative ways to partner together. We identify individuals as George is working with them through community options. Let's say they don't raise to the degree of complexity for George to step into a case with an individual that may be especially difficult. We can still work with those folks, say, as their hearings their hearing opportunities have ended, and now they still need to find a place to live. We can help step into that fold. We coordinate with the MFP agency with recovery. As was mentioned earlier, I previously worked in the Home Choice program, the MFP program, as a housing coordinator. So learned a lot of the kind of nitty-gritty details about how the MFP program worked, was able to kind of incorporate it into the work I do now. So we work with individuals that I like to call applied, approved, not enrolled. And I'm sure if any of you have worked with somebody transitioning, you know this person who is 3/4 of the way through their transition and something happens. there is some sort of, I'm seeing lots of heads nod, and that's really good for, basically 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What happens is there's some barrier that stops that person, right? And for some reason, we don't have that resource available to us. For whatever reason, we didn't anticipate that somebody was going to need it. And in those circumstances, we can be there as a program to step into that gap and say, we'll help you. We also work with Section Q, as many of my colleagues here today have mentioned. We look at Q and we try to say, okay, well, if someone is interested and we're finding that, let's go ahead and help them. We're also working with folks, and we're learning to work with folks that are in immediate danger of returning to a facility. We see that we have to look at all ends of this continuum. It's really, I think, we work a lot with folks that are in institutions now, but if we're really thinking about good stewardship of resources and we're thinking about long-term system reform, we have to worry about the folks once they've been out for a few months, and what do they need? And so we work with them identifying their needs. In some ways, I'll talk a little later, that's also helping to build best practices for our providers. The other thing that we do is we coordinate between providers. I get a phone call, email on a regular basis saying, I've got this person who's just not doing all that well and might need some help. But keep in mind, this is not an exhaustive list. Believe me when I say I will help anybody wherever I can find them, whatever they need. So we're really open-ended when it comes to referrals. And we're really open-ended as a program in terms of who we serve. We're looking to serve folks with a mental illness. We've really brought in. We also work with folks that are youth, 18, 19-year-old, that have severe emotional distress. So we're really looking for a broad-ended scope. Where we become restrictive is really in process. And I want to talk about kind of process on the individual level, and then some of the other things as a program we're looking at in a larger scale, a more systemic way. So we're very broad in who we serve, and I'll show you later, we're very broad in what we are willing to pay for, but we really demand some level of due diligence, some level of best practice to ensure that our money is being used well. So walking through the process real quick in like 10 seconds. We have a release of information that we ask for. When we hear that somebody is interested in using our program, let's say that they need help with a housing subsidy and they can't find a housing subsidy anywhere else. First thing we'll do is we'll ask them for a release of information. That makes sense with HIPAA laws. Of course, we want to be able to value individuals' privacy. The other thing is it allows us an opportunity to share information together as a supportive body between PASSAR and the MFP program and other places that we couldn't necessarily do traditionally. So now we can all get on the same page as we're thinking, what can we do creatively to care for somebody? And then we have an application. The application right now is it's a little large, but basically what we did is we said we know some things today in our state that individuals have gaps for. We include things like housing, arrears, back payments on utilities. I can't tell you how many folks that I've worked with MFP that the reason why they can't move is they have $800 of utility back payments and they don't know how they're going to pay for them, and that's the reason why they can't get out. I'm willing to pay $800 if that means that person can be sustainable for the long haul, and that's just common sense to me. So that's a way that we step into the fold. The other thing that we do is that we work with Home Choice, our MFP services, community support coaching, and all those things, and we can pay to continue those services beyond the 365 days that person could use it, again, to provide continuity. The really thing that we hinge on is I put this but for. The idea is to think, but for this one thing that's missing, this person would be sustainable out in community. And so we encourage our providers to be thinking that way. What's that but for? If I had this little bit more help, or if I had this one more thing, I can make a difference in this person's life. And that's really what we're doing. Again, we're really trying to emphasize due diligence and best practice for the folks that we're working with. So oftentimes some of the MFP providers I work with, our transition coordinators, will say, yeah, this wait list for this housing authority is 3 years long. Well, it's not worth it. I say in return, well, we'll help bridge that for those 3 years. But what wisdom does it take for you as a provider to say, you know what, I'm going to put this person on that wait list because month 37, they could still need that help. And so trying, again, to move away from the immediacy, because immediacy is important. And when you're trying to put out a fire, you don't think about rebuilding the house. You're focused on, spending time putting out the fire. So what we've done for our providers in this program is we've said, we'll give you the tools to put out the fire, but we're going to ask you to be thinking about how are you going to build this house for the long haul. So, again, due diligence, best practice. And we want to incorporate the biggest and the smallest needs. This includes housing. I would say there is no person in this room that if I said what's one of the biggest issues you deal with, you'd say housing is one of the biggest ones. My friend who helped co-write this program with me would often talk about, if the one thing that would have somebody stay sustainable is if they had a box of Cracker Jack every night, because that's the thing that helps them stay sustainable out in the community, we'll pay for a box of Cracker Jack. Because again, it's this idea that not only are we serving people in the place where they want to be, but we also are looking towards being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, which means at the end of the day, if they're in a least restrictive, less costly setting, we're doing things that are benefiting people on all sides of the aisle. So once we go through the application, again, we're encouraging folks to think about what are the rocks that you need to turn over to ensure that you've looked at all your local resources. Once we see that, we go ahead and we provide an approval and we fund them. One of the other things, just to mention here real quickly, is this idea of recertification. We do an annual recertification so that we can continue to think about, okay, a year down the road, is your situation different? If it is, then let's think about what kind of resources you need from our program now. Now this could mean, we recertify every year. It could mean just every 6 months, every 7 months. It could mean whenever somebody needs some help. So on the system level, one of the things that we thought was really important is we said, well, we're going to get good real-time data. Every single person that's utilizing our program, we know the data that they have via PASSAR, we know their MFP information, we also know the resources that they've required from us. So we get to tell a story. And so what we can do is we can go to our local providers and we can say, hey, what we're seeing here are real issues, and we can recommend certain things on a system level that can really start to fill the gaps in the long haul. Again, emphasizing being creative, evidence-based solutions that are cost-effective. And this could impact a local level. Let's say, for instance, we have 15 people in a county that what they need is socialization, and we see that through the data. It's really easy for us to help pay for a supper club, for instance. That may make a big difference. It could mean on the state level that what we're doing is we're going to our partners at Medicaid and saying, we see that this is a service that we shouldn't have to pay for, but that we could encourage you all to think about doing an SPA for, or some other way to really think creatively. So again, we're eliminating the gaps. Or it could be something with our dear friends from CMS, that they see something that's valuable and we can inform them. My big goal, and I think that it's a pipe dream, but my big goal is to run myself out of business. And while I think that that is something that may never happen, I want to continue to aspire to the idea that I can eliminate the gaps in the long haul. Keeps me going every day. So how did we get the funding? I think for those of you who work on the state level and our policymakers are like, well, how do you make this work, right? So what we did is we analyzed 900 individuals who were in nursing facilities with severe and persistent mental illness. And we looked at their Medicaid claims 365 days before. They had transitioned in 365 days after. And we asked the question, are we actually saving Medicaid any sort of money by transitioning people from institutional settings into community? That answer was yes. And so what we did is we said, well, we would like to take a proportion of that money and reinvest it back into the community with these individualized resources, but also systemic resources. And so Medicaid and Ohio MHAS agreed to that. And so that's how this program works, is that we take a proportion of the savings per individual when they are from institutional settings into community. We take a portion of the state plan Medicaid, and we reinvest that back into these people's lives. So what we're doing is we're, again, being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but instead of just saying, well, we're going to take all this money back, we're going to continue to make this system better, and we're going to constantly improve. Again, in a dream world, I can run myself out of business because we've got a perfect system. And then I can retire and consult. Fingers crossed. The last thing here, we look to serve 500 individuals in this fiscal year and 700 individuals in the next fiscal year. This is in combination of Recovery Requires Community plus the MFP program. And that was really intentional because we wanted to look at these sort of transitions as a package. Again, we don't want to just necessarily one-off and silo our program and say, well, it's different than the MFP program. We're in this together. We're doing the same things. We just do them in different shades. And so by saying, Medicaid and mental health and addiction services are both being held accountable together to bring these numbers together, I think it inevitably puts us in a partnership where we're really doing some creative things as a result. So I highly encourage, when you're not, when you have opportunities to work with your MFP program, do so. Here's our contact information. I realize that is just a really, really high-level overview, and I realize I already went over time, of course. But I will tell you one other thing about this is that I'm convinced that our program, Recovery Requires Community, can really be replicated in any state in the country. And it's not super complicated. It's a matter of building the right relationships with your Medicaid office and having a similar goal. I think when you do that, this is a really easy program to replicate, and I would love nothing more than to see more states with a program like this. So I guess with that, we're all happy to field some questions, and thank you for your time.